Wake up, buyer payer people. It's a beautiful day. Go grab yourself another cup of joe and say hello to Jim and Michelle Rhoads on the Buy Here Pay Here Morning Show. Take it away, you two.
Good morning.
Friends. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Welcome to the end of the week and welcome to the morning show and the studio in North Ogden. We woke up to snow this morning.
Yeah.
Michelle wasn't feeling it. I was quite enjoying it. I like being out by the heaters and watching the snow.
Well, I mean, yes. Yeah. Under a few blankets around my shoulder on my lap.
Yeah.
It was okay. It was
cold.
It was cold because the wind kept whipping around and then like hit me in the face and in our patio, blowing snow into the patio. And I'm like, is this really worth it?
Yeah, we were supposed to, I don't know what the temperature was. I feel like it was around 30 when we woke up this morning, but I know we talked to some dealers who were 90 degrees in Florida yesterday. So they're like, it's too early for that.
There's an influencer that I watch an awful lot on TikTok, and I think she lives in Ohio or some, and she mentioned yesterday, because she posts every day. Mm-hmm. She mentioned yesterday, she usually broadcasts from outside.
Right.
And she's like, someone asked me yesterday why I'm wearing a coat.
Yeah.
She's like, because it's still cold outside.
Yeah.
I don't live down in Florida or in Carolinas or wherever where it's like consistently warmer.
I don't see the national weather much anymore, but mostly what I know is from social media and people that I meet with. We do virtual meetings with people all over the country all the time.
We go through this every year though. Whatever. Okay. So more about weather.
Next.
Had a V8 Plus meeting yesterday about how AI can help a dealership. And
had Meg Jones.
Meg. And then there was an interview with a company that, pretty cool.
They do what do they call it? Voice agents
and bots.
So digital voice agents.
They're the founder is actually from Apple.
They
worked with Steve Jobs, and so it was pretty cool to kind of get their perspective on AI and the things that it can do, and what is customizable
and the things it's not ready to do, at least in the small independent auto dealer world.
It was interesting because because I said, now can start to learn the answers, and he said something, and I can't exactly remember the phrasing, but it was like, AI hallucinates.
Oh, I didn't hear him say that.
You didn't hear him say that? And I was like, I would really like to learn more about this. That when you take off, he says it's really important that we keep the bumpers on.
Yeah.
And because they see that AI does this hallucinating thing. And he used the word hallucinate. So I was like, I would really love to learn more about that, but I'm not sure that's something for the morning show.
Yeah.
That's probably just personal,
that kind of hallucination. I don't know. I didn't catch that, but I think they are working to kind of keep it within its boundaries. But it's
really cool. We use it all the time. AI. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But these guys are giving us specifically voice agent thing. And so, that was interesting to hear them talk about that part. And I've heard their voice agents.
Yeah. And then you had a V8 meeting last night that was really great conversation because Jim brought some interesting perspective to running numbers yesterday.
Yeah, and that's what we're talking about today is this new kind of thing that I'm calculating. So in the latest edition, if Jim comes up with a new, KPI, it's like, but in fairness, it's what when I sit around noodling early in the morning when the house is quiet, I'm often thinking about. And I work with spreadsheets a lot, but really the effort is to try to find ways to take what data we have and apply it in a way that dealers have a new angle on the thing.
New insight.
And so this one's different than a lot of what we've been looking at. And I'm always, because I'm a cash flow guy first, I always tell people, look, we can't pay our techs with contracts. Hey, we're a little short on cash this week. Here's Mary Smith's contract. So that doesn't work that way. Like we need cash for what we do. And so we got to be able to generate cash. So what this looks at very specifically is the cash return on cash, cash return on the cash that we put at risk. Yeah. So we've got, some metrics, but I think, what I saw, we had 2 meetings this week where I presented that for the first time. And I got to tell you, dealers they weren't getting it. Like I probably have some work to do to present it and a little differently, but it's good information. I think it's new enough that we're all going to be learning together what its value is. But really what I'm trying to give dealers a look at is it's not about profitability. It has nothing to do with profit. It has to do with how the portfolio is producing, and then what we can use, how we can then apply that to some other calculations. So are you ready to get into it?
I am. And I just want to say, rate it, risk it, reap it. Great. That's pretty catchy.
Oh, that's ChatGPT. Thank you very much. So this was my first morning to actually, run the podcast subject.
Yeah, I sat there next to you and it's like, give me 3 catchy titles that's around this. And it was a hard decision because it's like, and super, again, AI, amazing.
Yeah, really. It thinks differently, right?
Yeah, it does.
It has a broader scope of information to pull from, and so it's good stuff. But anyway,
so we're going to talk about rate it, risk it, rate it, reap it, the cash on cash formula for buy here, pay here success.
Yeah, so let me walk through it verbally before I start presenting on the screen. What this is, I said already, this is not related to overhead. So everything that we're talking about here has nothing to do with whatever the overhead of cost of operating the business.
That is a whole nother beast.
Yeah. And while it's cash, it's not, we're just looking at the portfolio itself. This is how much we put at risk in a contract, often called cash and deal, or
so the risk it, how much you're putting at risk.
Yep. And so, but what I can jump onto this one then. What we're looking at then is the actual portfolio performance. Like we're doing a 6-month average on the some would call it loss to liquidation ratios. I call it conversion rate. It's the rate at which the portfolio is converting to cash and or charging off. So it measures all those
aggregate.
Things. Right.
Yes.
Right.
That's like the entire portfolio, not a note, but the entire portfolio.
So this would also sometimes be referred to as like a rolling 12 or a rolling 24.
And you do it usually 3-6 months. And then what you do it further, but for this, it's 6 months.
It's 6 month history is what we're looking at in this, the numbers we're going to look at today. So you're taking the dealer's 6 month of portfolio performance. So those who aren't seeing the screen, the drivers are actual portfolio performance.
That's one.
Those calculations on
principal
collected,
which projects yield.
Right. That projects. Then we apply that to a forecast or a rolling forward, and that then the next component is the average note or the amount financed.
Okay.
So I'm going to show some of those on the screen here momentarily, and then the last one would be the average cash and deal.
Okay.
All
right.
You're with me so far.
I'm with you. I'm with
you.
So
the other thing this is not related to, let me make sure people know, because we talked about this, the portfolio size or the portfolio calculations. It's not about the amortization. Like, if it's not that the customer put $1,000 down and their payment's $500 a month, so we forecast the payment stream on an amortization. This is not that.
This is just what's coming in.
Yeah, this is not what we're supposed to collect. This is what we're actually collecting based on our history. This is the rate at which we're actually I sometimes call it the burn rate on our portfolio. It's like, this is the rate that our portfodeo is converting to cash. So if we apply all those things, then it starts to give us, some information that, let me get over here and share the screen and then, or get loaded on the screen. And if you wouldn't mind sharing my screen for me.
All right.
So what you've got is, let me get back to the numbers that I think are going to be most telling here. This is a little messy to view. Give me just a moment. I forgot I made some changes.
You can make that much bigger too.
I will. And so let's get to the right part of this. I can show first while we're here. These are some of the numbers that are used to drive the equation. So, here's that 6 month average. So what you've got is, these dealers in one group, and we're just looking at one group, but these are some of the drivers that dictate that projection I was referring to. So we calculate each month. This is an actual 6 month average. We have that number each month. And so now when you look at that and you say, okay, this dealer is charging off 3.1% principal.
Where are you on what line?
On row 202. You seeing that?
Okay, 202. So where are you highlighted? Okay, right there. Excellent. Thank you.
Okay.
No, I just needed to know what wrong.
Yeah. So that's principal collected as a percentage of the opening principal. So that's kind of the method that you apply.
Principal collected Okay.
And you start to see, like, look at the relationship between this number. Whoops. This happens to me once in a while. That number compared to this number. This is the principal that's being charged off.
Like 0.9% compared to the
3.1
3.1%. Okay.
Yeah. So these are kind of the four numbers that really drive either collateral recovery rate. You can also see down here, this is just for point of reference, collected principal versus collected charge off.
Okay.
Like you can
so what you want to see, this is just kind of what I'm seeing, is you want to see a higher principal collected than principal charged off. And so it's like you want that principal charged off as and the low to be a really small number, and then the higher. So it's like what you're able to collect, the higher the numbers. Like I'm really great at collections. What you're charging off, if it's a high number, then that's.
Well, we look at both. When you say good at collections, it's both. Obviously, we're collecting both principal and interest, right, on that. And so the question becomes, and the reason this line down here I think is important, is this is the relationship of, this is showing how much principal out of our portfolio are we putting in the bank versus how much is not going to the bank in that range of time.
Okay.
So this is charging off. Some of it, principal leaves our portfolio in a couple of ways. We either collect it from the customer and put it in the bank, or we charge it off because the account didn't perform and we write off that principal, right?
Yeah.
So that's basically a comparison of those two things. And so obviously you'd like to see that number running higher. Dealer one is very high.
You'd like it to be over 100.
Yes, for sure. And I've had some old articles on this, and you and I've talked about that particular number on the podcast in the past, but I would just, while we're here and we can see that, I want folks to be able to see that particular number. And then we take those kind of numbers based on the 6 month of portfolio history, and we start to apply it to, let me find this, bear with me. I'm going to have to, I know it's hard to watch somebody else run the screen, but here they are right here. So this is something I call the PRI index, which is, it's just my own calculation. It's just basically taking the PRI is principal, repo, and interest. Okay. So it's, again, the yield, like it's projecting, this is how much our portfolio is currently yielding.
Okay.
Or projected to yield across
higher number,
months.
better cash flow.
Yeah.
Better,
And so this basically is, we don't need to dig too deep in the weeds. I feel like we've touched on this one in the past, but I just want folks to know this is what then begins to forecast the anticipated cash flow on the portfolio that we currently have on the books. Like if we quit putting dollars in that portfolio and we just ran it off, or the burn rate, if you will, then this dealer number one is projected to bring in about 78% of their current portfolio balance, or in this case,
next
2 years.
2 years.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So, okay.
And so you can see how that number varies. So you got 76%, 67%. You got one dealer down here down at 58%. This is just cash. It's looking at, based on all the numbers we've turned in.
So, I mean, if you were to look at that, you'd be like, okay, this looks good. This looks good. This looks good. There's some work that needs to be done on this one.
Right.
A couple of them.
Number 8.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, but there's some disparity there in the numbers, between the groups. So this starts to highlight some stuff, and we can talk about that more. But now you move to this cash on cash return number, and I've got that charted. I'll show you the graph here in just a moment. But
what does that tell you?
That's telling us the amount of cash that we're going to recover relative to the amount of risk that we're taking in cash.
Okay. What based on, we've charted it out. These are your trends. This is how much cash you're going to recover based on, or compared to your, risk you got out on the street kind of thing.
Right.
And so this is risk and cash and deal.
That's right. Risk and cash and deal.
So that's like how much you bought the car for, and all of your repo and whatever else it's financed that was money out of your own pocket, because we double and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So okay.
And
so
this,
I get
again,
this.
no overhead in this number. This is just our cost of the car when we reconditioned it minus the down payment and net trade that we got. So that's our cash and deal. So now it says, okay, we put X amount of dollars. So let me jump over here and show you the numbers on an actual dealer's, kind of what's driving these numbers. Let me pick one at the top here. Let me zoom in on this so you can see a little better.
Yeah. You can zoom in a lot more. There you go. Okay.
Is that better?
Yep.
Whoops. All right. So this is dealer number one. So what we do is we apply those same numbers that you saw. Dealer number one across 24 months was at 78%, right? So this is the note amount. And so we use.
That's the note amount.
Right.
That's
the
not,
average note.
That's not your risk on the road.
Right.
That's like the full thing. You've already marked it up plus whatever.
Minus the down payment. This is the actual amount that we financed. Okay.
All right.
So this means, so what I do is I take that burn rate, if you will, and says, okay, based on our current rate of converting our portfolio to cash, that 17.6 would convert to cash at the tune of across 24 months, about 78%. Let's stop for a minute and explain. This is something that's going to be challenging for a dealer to do at home.
Unless
right?
unless they are a numbers spreadsheet, I can figure this out. I just need to know what the assumptions are. And
yeah, for sure. They can build their own projections for sure. I just mean, this is getting a little more advanced than what we see most dealers do. Okay. Right. So,
and I appreciate that. And I want to talk about why it's a good thing to understand.
Of course. Yes, for sure. So, I'm really focused on 24 months that's a whole separate podcast on why I think 24 months is the number or the range to look at. But what that tells us is if we apply this dealer 78% conversion rate or
typically
yield,
yes,
then we apply that to the 17.6. What it says is we could expect to collect about 13.8 on that contract across 24 months. Again, not the amortization, just based on
like 17,000. Now you're going to be collecting,
across 24 months. This dealer we collect about 13.8. And so what that says is if you measure that 13.8 against the average cash and deal, that dealer will have pocketed about $2,800 against that. So 13.8 versus the 10.9 of risk says we've now across 24 months, we've collected.
And is this principal only or is this principal and interest?
No, this is principal and interest plus repo recovery.
Okay.
So it's applying all the stuff, all the kinds of cash that we can bring in. So if you think.
So how long is it? It's obviously more than 12 months before they break even.
Correct. And this dealer's numbers it is.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And so what it now says, and this is an annualized number. You see, I put over there, this is annualized. So what that means is that $2,800 relative to that 10.9, it took 2 years to generate that positive $2,800. Then we're at about 12.9% for that dealer annualized. So about 13% per year is what they're getting back on their risk.
Do you know what the note length is on this dealer off the top of your head? Because it's more than 3 years.
It's about 3 years.
Is the average? I mean, well, okay. What's when they originate the note? Is it like a 3-year amortization schedule?
I can go find that.
Okay.
Help me understand why it matters.
Because I'm just looking at like, if they after 3 years have collected 96.5% of what was financed, then if they're going 4 years, I mean, what's their rate of collecting?
And this is part of why this is different is I would say it doesn't matter what the term of the loan is. What matters here, because it's not based on an amortization. It doesn't matter what the term is. It just says, regardless of whether you make the contracts 48 months or 60 months or whatever, this is the amount of cash that you're yielding out of the contract period.
Okay. And it's, I like it's 12, 24, 36, because there are very few dealers out there that work less than that 36 months.
Yeah. But again, I think this is where we have a chance to get lost if we're not careful, because it almost doesn't, you could, let's say dealer 1 does a 36-month contract and dealer 2 does a 48-month contract. They could both have exactly the same numbers here on the results, because it's only calculating what you actually put in the bank.
Yeah.
right? So it does
Yeah.
across 24 months, it's what they both put in the bank. So their numbers could vary as far as
Okay.
how well they convert that portfolio. So it almost doesn't matter what the length of contract is in this calculation.
Okay.
Okay. So I would just be careful about that, because what it is saying though is that, this, and I'll show you over here on this side, it shows that this dealer, that's a good indication of term, because it says this dealer is going to collect 78% of that money, but still have about 37% of the account balance to collect, or the principal balance to
36
collect.
months?
In 24
In
months.
24 months. Okay. So
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we look very
Gotcha.
kind of
'Cause I
hyper
see,
focused on
yeah, I see
24
where
months and what we
that's
do in V8.
okay.
So this is, we didn't say this is, one particular V8 group, and I just used their numbers as an example because we had all the calculations pulled together, and we had 6 months worth of history with this particular group for
Okay.
all members. So that's what that looks like. And so I think, now you've got this one dealer at 12.9 annualized. So now we can go back and look at the difference in those numbers. Here's dealer one again at 12.9. And the next dealer is 45% on that same number. They're getting back 45% annually against that risk. Everybody remember, there's no overhead here. We're just looking at amount of risk that I take and how much cash I recover relative to that risk. And so this is saying this dealer is recovering about 45%.
Okay. So how would deal structure be a factor in the difference in those things?
Because of the amount of risk in the contract. So let's jump over here. We'll give you an example. This dealer over here, dealer 7, is at, for those who can't see the screen, that dealer is about 64% highest in this small group.
Okay.
Okay. So what that really means is it's a function of a couple things. That dealer either is converting their portfolio to cash well, or their portfolio conversion relative to their cost in their contracts is favorable. They may be collecting at the same rate as the other dealer, but they have less risk in their contract.
Okay.
So again, the portfolio, the contract is up here, and I collect out the contract based on the amount financed at some rate, my burn rate, but my risk in that same contract is less. Okay. So now how much cash I recover against my risk. Why are you laughing?
I'm just like, there are so many questions going through my head that may have nothing to do with where you're trying to go. But I mean, I'm just, because I'm like, what kind of, I see so many factors in what would drive these numbers. One, the cost of the car.
Yep.
To your underwriting.
The underwriting is going to affect the portfolio performance.
Yeah.
It's not going to change the cost or the risks numbers, right?
Your collection practices.
Yeah,
too.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
So like, well, those are the first three that I came up. So I was just like wondering, are you seeing on when you're looking at all these different portfolios, because we have lots of different portfolios that we're looking at, and where ones, they may have a smaller portfolio because they haven't been in business as long, maybe don't have multiple locations, whatever, and bigger portfolios. Are you seeing trends in cost of car driving this?
Well, keep in mind, this calculation is brand new. Like this week is the first week that we're seeing it. So when you say trends, we don't have history of trends here, but certainly cost of car is one of the main drivers here. So
do you know, when you look at this and you know these specific dealers, are they, because we deal with dealers that buy clunkers, those that buy rebuild titles, those that buy really nice vehicles. And I mean, the spectrum is really nice vehicles, and then they refurbish the heck out of it. Yeah. It's like, there is nothing wrong with this car. Like, yeah, it's people are going to get in and go, oh, it's almost like it's new. So do you know, just from what you understand about these, which type of vehicle is performing better?
No. We don't have enough information on that yet. So we're not, and it's not something we're analyzing. Like, we're not analyzing year, make, model.
So what assumptions, from what you understand about these portfolios, can you make,
Okay.
can you feel more confident in making about like how they're buying and pricing and collecting? I
Okay.
mean, does that make sense? Because it's like
Yeah.
I really would like to see, are there a couple of takeaways that we can go like these? What we see here is that X, Y, and Z are that my assumption is are the reasons why these numbers are better.
Yes, I've got some
Okay.
numbers. So probably a good illustration. Let's look at dealers 5 and dealer 6 right there, side by side. You're still seeing my screen,
5 and
right?
6, yes. Okay,
Okay,
so
so let's
we
zoom
start
in
at
on those.
72.6 and 72.2. Pretty close.
Whoops, I lost it.
I got you. Scooted on over just a
Yeah.
tidge. I know.
All right.
Technical.
A tidge, she
a
says.
tidge.
That's her
It's a
word.
real word in
Is
my
it? I don't
vocabulary.
think it's
In my
word.
vocabulary, it is. Okay.
It's a Michelle word.
It's a Michelle
That's
word.
okay. If
Yes,
Jim
we
can
all
have,
understand
if Jim can have
this.
unique metrics, you can have
exactly,
unique words.
exactly.
All right. So let's look at 5 and 6. And so let's look at the comparison. What conclusions can we draw?
Okay.
So dealer 5 is 72.2% yield. They're going to collect about 72% at their current burn rate across 24 months. Dealer 6 is right about the same number.
Same thing.
Okay.
Projected cash yield.
Yep.
In 24 months, they're about the same.
Yep.
Okay.
But
remaining
what's left
balance.
remaining balance at the end of 24 months for dealer 5 is about 21%, whereas dealer 6 is about 35%.
Okay, so that has nothing to do with their amortization, with like how long the note is for?
No, it does. That's one of the conclusions we can draw
So
here.
obviously dealer 5 has shorter notes.
That's what I would conclude.
Okay,
if
gotcha.
I were just offered this
All right.
information right here.
Okay.
Because they're both collecting about the same. They're both going to squeeze about the same amount of money out of their portfolio across 24 months. But this one, dealer 6, has got more money left to collect.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay?
Gotcha.
So it starts to, this is part of what I like about this calculation is it starts to test business models. It lets dealers see, oh, look at your model compared to my model.
And as they get to know each other and they understand more and more and more as they're asking questions about the business model, it's going to, yeah, gotcha.
And now you jump over, while we're talking about that and comparing, let's look at dealer number 8. What this says is, look, the math is the math. It's the same exact math applied to the other members. So when my collection rate is lower, projected to collect less in 24 months. A couple of things are happening. But the first thing that points to is we're just not converting that portfolio to cash as well as the fellow members. Or it says one of three things. It either says that, it says that Jim's math is wrong, or it says the dealer's numbers are wrong.
And I'm looking at this and I'm going, okay, here's some of my assumptions is that if they're only collecting 58%, and then the remaining portfolio balance is 25%. It's like okay, my brain just fried.
Okay. No.
I'm wondering if that has anything to do with the interest rate.
Well, that's one of the three components in this line right here, that 58%. So it's all three numbers. So keep in mind the PRI index, it says over there in the definition on row 117, that is principal plus interest plus repo proceeds. So they're all in there. So in that way, it doesn't much matter what the mix is. I mean, you would feel it if it's heavy in repos, that means we're charging off a fair amount, right? And so you would feel it in a different way. Right.
Yeah.
But it still puts all of them in the bucket. It's like all the cash that gets
because that's all the cash that's coming in now for me, it's like, so that I can understand this better is I would love to be able to see individually principal interest repo proceeds.
I have that.
Because I think I would learn a lot more. But
okay.
Yes.
Good.
So
well, future podcast. So we can bring that split information back and dig it a little deeper.
This is a combined thing of all of those.
Right.
And so what are your assumptions about dealer 8?
Well, what I see is, again, let's rule out a couple things. If my calculations are right and the numbers that the dealer's remitting to us are right, then the only
which is something that we're working on. We validate the numbers, but
we're seeing some problems still in the way people are reporting. So that but if my numbers are right and their numbers are right, then what it tells me is their portfolio is not generating as much cash relative to the other dealers in the group. Pure and simple, they're not producing as much cash across a 24-month period as their neighbors.
Yeah. their cash on cash return is not bad.
It's not bad. Why? Why would that number be okay? It's because their risk is low. Their cost in car must be low. So the cash that they're bringing in, that 58% relative to their risk, is on par.
So cash on cash on cash yield return. So if you're looking at this, like, which line is the moral of the story? Would it be line 120, where it's the cash on cash return?
I prefer the 24-month one.
You prefer the 24-month. Okay.
Row 119. I'm looking at 24 months.
So based on that, dealer 8 is doing pretty well.
Not bad. That's a 39% annualized return.
Dealer 7's doing fantastically.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, fantastically. So again,
on a cash basis, here's what we don't know.
Yeah.
These dealers could have varying degrees of overhead. So their cost to operate this particular, this is a cash machine, right? So this is why I prefer to look at it like a cash machine.
Yeah.
We take a certain amount of money to build this cash machine, and then we wait to see how much cash it brings back to us.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna do a side note on this. If you all are listening to this podcast, please go to our YouTube channel. You'll see the video. You'll see all of the pieces that we're talking about. Right. Those that are listening live, it's usually they're able to see all the stuff. But if you're listening on one of the syndicated podcast stations, go to our YouTube channel, because you're going to be able to see the things as we go through it. So, okay, moral of the story.
Well, my big moral here is I think what it does is, and again, by looking at 24 months, and there are a lot of our dealers. In fact, let's go back across this quickly. You can see that. Let's look at dealer number.
I'm just going to say something while you're shifting screens. Every dealer out there that feels or that are a lone island, that are not meeting with other dealers in some kind of peer group, have it's being able to compare yourself to others and have the conversations around what are you doing different. You can't have this conversation with someone you've just met at a conference. This kind of conversation requires, like, we've been in the trenches together for a certain amount of time. Yeah. And so it's something that's kind of difficult for you to plug your numbers in. And I'm just saying, whatever it is that you choose, dealers out there, there is a immense amount of value in being a part of a peer group. And a peer group is like, the dealer 20 groups. NIADA handles a lot of those, and those are, there's a lot of aggregate data. There's a lot of comparison, and V8 groups. I'm not sure. I think there are probably others out there, but I'm not really sure. But yeah.
So what we do is, our
V8
thing is pretty simple. This is all built off, the dealers send in about 25 numbers each month. And this, all that we're looking at, is built off of those 25 numbers, right? Yeah. So but we have to reconcile and validate the portfolio numbers that are coming in. When I say reconcile, it's a soft reconciliation, plus or minus 1%, so that we can make sure we're working with clean numbers. And so again, there's still some work ongoing, but 20 groups been around for decades.
Moral of the story: what can you take away from this?
Here's let me be a moderator.
Any actionable anything?
Let me be a moderator for a minute.
Okay.
I want the dealers to decide. And so I'm going to put the numbers in front of them. And of course, you've heard me draw my own conclusions around what we're looking at here. But I think what I would be looking at, first of all, go find a way to measure your portfolio metrics, measure what I call conversion rates, start calculating, start capturing this information month over month, stack it together month over month.
Is this one of the tools you're going to be giving away at NIADA?
It's we can. It's the same tool that I offered on the podcast. If you guys want a portfolio performance calculation tool, just send in the email, Jim@WhiteHatWay, if you want to put that on the screen. Just Jim@WhiteHatWay.com. Send me an email, and I'll send you the template that we use to, if we're working with a dealer for the first time and we want to see some historical data to be able to build some of this kind of stuff, this is what we would use. But I think when you tell me, I'm really still at the place where I'm assessing. You want to take this spreadsheet down from the screen for a minute, because I'm going to come back over, and that way it won't get so ugly for our viewers.
There we go.
Just take everybody off.
Yeah, I did because I had it on the right. So many buttons to push on our software.
So the other thing I would say is I think that part of the reason this matters is it really starts to test the business model. And let me just tell you, we had some dealers in these 2 meetings this week that they were pretty uncomfortable, right? I mean, the one dealer's like, this has got me a little disturbed, right? And obviously I'm not trying to upset anybody, but the math is the math. And it's probably helpful that they get this kind of wide view to say, maybe your business is not doing what you think it's doing. And so this is why I think it starts to test the model of when you stack it against other dealers and so again, I'm looking at cash here. This dealer is generating this much cash and they have this much risk. This dealer's generating this much, and let them decide. What do you like? Because to me, this starts to illustrate. And the reason I did the 36-month thing is because when you start to look at 24 versus 36, it's like this starts to really put a stress test on the model and say, look, all the overhead, we're busy, we're hiring people, we got all the stuff going on, we're reconditioning cars and whatever. And all this really does is step back and say, you know what? We're putting this much cash at risk. And this is how long it's taking us to get that cash back. Or to, and dealers have had in 20 groups, and we have it in our V8 composite, a number that calculates what we call months to breakout, which is really taking that cash and deal and saying, if the customer pays what their payment is, it would take us many months to recover the cash and deal, which is a component in what we're talking about here. But that's assumed the customer pays all those payments, right, exactly as they're supposed to. And so that would be that math. But what I'm trying to do is look at that and say, let's measure it across a period of time. And I'm hyper focused on 24 months to say, what does that look like? What position are we in at the end of 24 months so that we can make a judgment about where we go next? And I think
people like Alan, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I think it stress tests the model side by side.
We had Alan on the show, Alan Keat, last Friday, and he's someone that just really understands the markets and the money and all of that. Is that if you can get a note to collect through 24 months, the rest is just gravy. It's like, it's the key is to keep people engaged for 12 to 24 months. And then, so if you're not converting your portfolio to a place where you're now above you've made more than your cash and deal and in 24 months, because there was one on there that is just like, they're still they were
at zero.
They're at zero in 24 months. It's like there's something potentially inherently flawed with the model that you're working on.
Yeah. And so what that particular dealer that we saw in there, it caused them to say, we got to go back and look at our numbers to say, are we something
reporting correctly?
Right.
Yeah.
Are we reporting correctly? So this is another thing. It kind of exacerbates or kind of exaggerates some of the parts of this in a way that I think is useful, because it puts it to the test. And we talk a lot about apples to apples, trying to make sure that we're, regardless of what software, regardless whether we're lease here, pay here, buy here, pay here, that we have. And that's something we do in our V8 groups is we put lease here, pay here, and buy here, pay here in the same group. Some of our dealers said that 20 groups do the same. Last I knew, they were trying to create specifically lease here, pay here for their own groups. But we like the idea, and especially now in light of these conversations, I like the idea of having the dealers in the same groups, because it really starts to test the models. And we're just looking at cash. We're not looking at profitability. We're not looking at value. We're not looking at LTV. We don't know what the car value is. We're just saying, regardless of whether that's a 2016 Camaro or a 2019 F-150, the portfolio is here's the rate at which those contracts are converting to cash. And
it's like, there's a some dealers like everything to look really a certain way.
Okay.
Is that, and then other dealers are not as interested in what it looks like as much as it is what it yields. Okay. And so, because I see it's like where like the whole idea of recon.
How far you
that
go?
how far do you go?
Mhm.
Are you bought the car for 5,000 or probably like the one I'm thinking of is like, let's say 12,000, and then you're putting another $1,500 to $2,000 into it. And it's just like that, that's money that you're putting in because why?
Yeah.
And so, we see it's like, are people going to not buy if you don't fix the scratch?
Right. Right.
Are people and maybe you might have you might bring in two more people because the price is a little bit different than the one person that's like, I want it to look perfect.
Mhm.
So it just, there's so many just different variables. And I do see frequently dealers that there's a pride element
Mhm.
in my cars look perfect. And that doesn't put money in the bank.
No,
Yeah.
for those dealers, they would argue, well, it helps me sell a few more customers, that wouldn't buy otherwise.
Is that
And
an
they're also going to
assumption
make
or
the
is
case.
that
Well,
yeah, I
we
don't
had
know.
that conversation in the group last night. It's like,
Mhm.
obviously you're doing that reconditioning, and we asked a dealer who had done that. They moved to a higher ACV
Mhm.
model, as a strategy. And so now they look at the numbers and they get to ask themselves, is that working?
Is that strategy working?
Is it working?
And here's one of the beautiful things about being involved in something like this,
Mhm.
or being a numbers nerd and doing your own,
Yeah.
is that you can't change a variable and have really solid understanding about whether it actually moved the needle unless you're tracking it over 6 months, 12 months,
Right.
24 months. And then, so,
Sure.
it's like, cause I've watched also dealers that they see something that needs to be improved and they throw everything they can at the thing
Right.
and then make assumptions about what's working and what's not.
Right.
So, there's an awful lot there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess in summary, I would say,
Mhm.
you can look at these numbers and say, how could I improve
Mhm.
if I'm a dealer in that group and I look at
Mhm.
my own numbers, how could I improve that number?
Yeah.
One would be collect better, convert the portfolio to cash better, right? That would be
And
step one.
anyone
Yeah.
in this business, if they can move that needle by 2%, 5%,
Right.
it's like it's a night and day difference
Sure.
to them.
So
Yeah.
then the other side of this equation, sort of the denominator, if you will, would be cost of car. Got to get
Mhm.
my cost of car down.
Mhm.
So, what I spend for the car, what I spend in reconditioning, it's a total
Mhm.
inventory cost. Got to get that number down or get my down payments up, because it's really calculating the difference, the delta
risk on the
between
road.
the risk on the
The
road at the
risk on the
time of
road.
delivery.
Yeah.
And so if I can reduce my risk, then now obviously and without changing my portfolio yield, if I
Mhm.
can still get my 75% out of my
Mhm.
portfolio in 24 months, then I'm just getting more cash against the risk that I took.
Yeah.
So that's back to sort of an alternate way to look at the risk to
Mhm.
reward ratio thing that I talk about.
Mhm.
It's like how much reward are we getting against our risk, and
Yeah.
over what time period? So that's why we annualized it, is just
Yeah.
to say annually it looks like this. Okay. So it's pretty deep, this is going pretty deep in the weeds. And like I said, a lot of our dealers, in fairness, they were just kind of, I don't quite get it. Like I don't quite, and that's okay. I want them to be truthful about that. And we are definitely going pretty
Well,
deep in the weeds.
and it is one of the things that dealers, knowing these things knowing them deeply, knowing intimately,
Mhm.
knowing your numbers,
Yeah.
is really, really helpful for you to make choices around where to pivot.
Right.
If you don't know your numbers intimately, then it is that I'm throwing everything at this because I know there's something wrong.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. And it's like the more you understand your numbers, and Darla's actually speaking about this at
Oh, yeah.
the
NIAD.
NIADA
Good.
conference. It's about know your numbers.
Good.
So she's speaking about that. Jim is also speaking about numbers too.
Yeah.
It's
We got two success formulas, one for a quick look at profitability and a quick look at cash flow.
Yeah. So, please, those of you guys that are on the fence about whether or not you're going to come, there's going to be some really, really good information from people that either are currently dealers or have been dealers, and that really dive into understanding where their numbers are, which is super helpful.
Right. We'll just go a couple quick calendar items. We got Brent Carmichael coming to join us on May 2nd. That's a Friday. And then on May 5th in Texas, Brent presents the Collect the Cash, Not the Car thing. So folks can certainly fly into Texas. We're going to be primarily for dealers in that area.
Yeah. And to George Spat, I saw your message.
We'll look to see why that would be any different.
So we'll look to see. But also, George, be watching your email because you're going to be getting an invitation.
Oh, nice.
To something today.
Okay.
So we really appreciate you, and for those everyone that listens, we really appreciate you taking. We know that your day is busy.
Yeah.
So thank you for making it a part of your day. All right, everybody, have a great rest of your week. Thank you so much for joining.
Wednesday.
We will see you on Wednesday. All right.